And we are live on the Intersection podcast. I'm Mike Denick, Vice President of Marketing for Miovision, and I'm here joined with the CEO of Marketplace.city, Chris Foreman. Chris, welcome.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, right.
And we are live in downtown, beautiful Long Beach, California.
That's right.
So on the Intersection podcast, it's an opportunity for us to connect with, smart, really bright technology partners and suppliers, also some of our customers. So in this case, Marketplace.city. But before we do that, why don't we have you share with the audience a little bit about yourself?
Sure.
Who you are, where you're out of, and we'll kind of start there.
Yeah. So I'm about 20 years in the technology industry, almost entirely on the supplier vendor side, and almost entirely in the enterprise software space. And I'd say probably more than 70% of my time has been working with government at all levels of government, from federal and DoD, international governments, all the way down to the dog catcher in the morgue. I'd say my passion really resides in working with local governments, and in my time working with cities and counties and villages and what have you, I find that they're the closest to the problems that are happening in our cities around the world. So that's kind of my passion in really addressing a lot of those issues happening and using innovation in order to solve them. One of those challenges that I found governments facing was just the sheer acquisition and purchase of new innovation and new technology to bring it in-house in order to leverage it within their communities. And while I was, selling technology to local governments, I was constantly running into issues, not only with our technology, but seeing issues of governments acquiring new technology and being able to deploy it. A lot of those delays led to a worse station or status for the residents within those communities. And if you could accelerate something, get more technology in, it can improve the lives of your residents. And so we designed Marketplace.city in order to help address this issue of identifying new technology in markets for state and local government, and then making it easier for those governments to evaluate, purchase, and adopt those technologies. So,
really cool. And even thinking about prior to my life, I spent time in corporate, and we used to have a very large, fulsome procurement team, and we had a REBA, and we had global contracts negotiated, and it was the most painful thing ever.
Right.
With a very sophisticated, well-run procurement vehicle, you still have it's like the worst part of your week is thinking about how you're going to buy something of significance.
Right.
So I think, obviously you have a focus on this municipal, city government level, but I think it's pervasive across. Not an easy thing, especially as it relates to risk and wanting to make sure people aren't overstepping. So what has been kind of your big evolution or transformation that you've seen in this space? I mean, one thing that we've seen and why I think we're really curious about this is coming out of COVID, we've heard that not procurement, but projects have to be prioritized. So now the city or agency that we want to go talk to and engage around can't fund or prioritize 10 purchases of something. And it could be a splash pad. It could be a set of ambulances. It could be smart city infrastructure, but they got to make choices. Yeah. So how has that been a labor thing? Has that been a prioritization thing? Has that been some change that you've also seen?
Yeah, I think that certainly that what's changed is that the city leaders don't have as much autonomy to say, hey, this is going to be my pet project, and it's my turn to have this project or this funding in my ward because everyone else had their turn, and now I'm up. I get to be the priority. I think you have to connect the projects that you want to administration's priorities, and the people who do that better are the people whose projects get prioritized. They move to the top of the list. And so the best way to do that is by looking at data. The projects that have a data back end to them, that have are justified with the use of real data of how this is going to impact residents, how this is going to save money, how this is going to attract new businesses to your city. those projects will get prioritized.
Of course.
Less so of like who's in line, but really who's prepared with the data for the return on the investment that's going to be made.
Yeah, it's so funny too, because, you know, even having spent time both on the kind of like the purchasing side or the implementing side, and now on, you know, on the supplier side, I do believe there's as much competition that we have in trying to differentiate our offering to get into, say, Long Beach, but there's probably 2 times to 3 times more competition for us to differentiate our project against something that's not even
something
related.
else happening in the city. Yeah.
Yeah, because then that's the piece that sometimes as a marketer or a salesperson, when we communicate our value, it needs to be really tight and clear about what we're going to do. That's like a complete no-brainer versus the 10 fire trucks and the splash pad that we didn't even think we were going to compete against.
Right.
Because that's in the totality of how they look at running their business. We need to be really clear on that. I'm so curious just on like finding your own business, finding your own kind of creative way to solve a business problem that's very real. And as you've evolved over 7 years, what is the ideal city or government agency that fits really well into your capabilities and how you show up?
Yeah. Well, this is my first time being a true founder of a company. It's not my first time being a CEO. And so I already knew that I liked that role because I often found that a lot of success and a lot of vision in the company is based on somebody who's willing to step up and make the hard decisions. And maybe it's because I don't have a very strong sense of personal preservation and that I'm willing to take risks, that I'm willing to make the wrong decision. I'm willing to make decisions. And so I always thought that was something that I could, help lead an organization because I'm not afraid to make kind of hard decisions and take risks. And so I think in starting a company is a big risk no matter what you're doing. But we felt that this was a calculated risk because we think that there's a market there. It's something in a market that I knew well and something I was very passionate about. And also just a great team of people. So it kind of came together. But where we have found, it took a while for us to really find where our sweet spot was. We first started by working more so by providing value to the vendors by helping to promote their products.
Right.
But we realized that there were, even if you promoted who you thought was a great solution for the cities that you worked with, the clients you worked with, they still needed to do market research. They still wanted to evaluate what else was out there.
Right.
And so we started providing more of a handheld service to do that market research and actually help manage a procurement for a government client related to technology. But procurement is still a very kind of rigid function within local governments. And so we decided, all right, maybe it's just best if we provide our data. So we're doing research and we get really good at collecting this data, because one thing that is so unique about this industry, and might be more unique within the United States than anywhere else, is that the data around what people are buying and the vendors that they're buying it from and what they paid is very transparent. You can go find that information, but it's not centralized. It's highly fragmented. And so we saw this opportunity to say, all this research is out, those data is sitting out there, free and accessible for people to use, but the buyers don't have the mechanisms to leverage it.
Naive and not exposed to it.
Right, and they don't have the time, they don't have the people, they don't have the bandwidth to go and do it because they're inundated with other things, and this is hard. And then they try to take these projects to a procurement team that is, as you mentioned, risk averse. And it's a technology purchase, which it seems like the most risky thing to do because there's vendors everywhere, right? And the vendors are almost, they're trying to create, whether intentionally or not, they create some opacity there because they don't want their competition to see what they're pricing. They don't want to steal their customers. They don't want to steal their trade secrets. So you sort of you create some smoke and mirrors there just to protect yourself, but you end up confusing the end client. So we want to provide this data to these buyers to make it easier for them to evaluate the market so that we can still accelerate the transactions and still influence that people will make purchases, products will get deployed, that new innovation will go into cities. But this is we found the sweet spot of how to be able to actually deliver
really
that.
Cool. It sounds like a bit of data, platform, and quasi-consulting? Like, is there a bit of coaching and consulting?
There is an element of what we do. It's different product lines, more or less. But yeah, there is kind of a more handheld consulting sort of process-oriented
governance,
piece.
help to support, build the capability.
Yeah. And then more of just a straight, like, here's the data, have at it, use it for what your purposes that you need. But yeah, we're here to help.
Very cool. What are the things that you're going to put into place as you kind of head back to Chicago?
Yeah. Well, as a company, we are in a big inflection point because we've just hired a new head of engineering earlier this year, and we've had a backlog of things that we want to do to, as we were discussing, kind of SaaSify our offering more, right? So we're doing a lot of software development. We're doing internal release this month of a lot of functionality, and with the hope by the end of the year, start turning some of our functionality over to our customers. So
very nice.
The desire to take what we're doing and package it up into a subscription that makes it just more consumable for this government and customer, because our marketplace model, while it can be very lucrative, we work on like really large technology projects, even some non-technology projects. Like we bought 75 buses for a school district because they needed us to, and we were able to help them with that. But this movement helps us to really get our data out there much faster than we would otherwise. And moves us away from more of a consulting element to being more of a subscription-based, more of a software company.
Awesome. Yeah, I mean, aligned with some of our takeaways too. It's there's less money than there was last year. There's less people than there was last year, and maybe there's more data than there was last year. So like, there is this kind of like trifecta of challenges that these cities are facing.
Yeah.
That with our option, same thing. We want to help consolidate, streamline, make it easier to extract value from their network or whatever. And I love the value prop, and I really appreciate you taking time today on the Intersection podcast.
Well, thank you for having me. I like what you all are doing, because there's a lot of sort of fear, uncertainty, and doubt around the deployment of new devices within cities, and there's not knowing like who's managing it, not knowing where where the data is going, what department owns this and owns that, and have the ability to actually take some more control, and provide the assurance internally of what is being deployed, but also you have to answer to residents and to city council and to county boards as well. And I think the more you can create some structure around it, the more it's going to help the market overall.
Awesome. Love it. Beautiful. Well, this is great. Let's go enjoy Long Beach. Thanks, folks. That's all for now.
Thanks a lot.